Hello, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm super excited to talk to you about a topic that is truly life-changing for both parents and kids, and that's about raising confident eaters. So today, I want to empower you as the parents to create a stress-free mealtime, stress-free meal times, and to raise kids who trust their bodies with food. So, whether you have a toddler who only wants to eat crackers, or you have teenagers who only 3 or 4 different foods, I want you to know that you are not alone and there is a way forward without stress and mealtime battles. Welcome, welcome. As you come in, I'm just going to say welcome and we're going to keep going. So, I want to share today's focus with you, which is number one, I'm going to give you 5 key strategies to help your kids develop a healthy, relaxed relationship with food. So, no more bribing, no more fights at the dinner table, just trust, balance, and confidence. And so, we're going to put a stop to those mealtime battles. We're going to move your child from the picky eater to an adventurous eater. And we're going to raise intuitive eaters who gravitate toward nutrient dense foods. Sound too good to be true? It's not. Trust me, stick with me. I'm going to break this all down for you. Now, if that all sounds good, we're going to dive in, but I am going to let you know a little bit about me for those of you who don't know me, whether you're here with me live on whatever platform or if you're watching this back. So I'm Danny. My full name is Danielle Smith Bullied, but I go by Danny Smith, and I am a certified nutrition health coach. I'm a speaker and I'm also an educator. And so what that means, because it sounds like a fancy title, what it means is that I teach people to nourish themselves on and off the plate. A really cool, unexpected thing that I learned throughout these past several years of health coaching is that most of our problems with food have nothing to do with food at all. I know it sounds a little crazy, doesn't it? But it's true. I also teach making peace with food, exercise, and your body. That doesn't mean just throwing all caution to the wind and just whatever it is. It means that we're going to make peace with where we're at as we're on our way to where we're going as we continue to make progress. I'm also really passionate about self-leadership. So I really love teaching. Yes, thank you. I love hearing that. I really love teaching and what I like to call it is holding loving accountability. I love to hold you accountable in a really loving way. I'm going to teach you all of these tools to be able to do that, and so that you can then move forward and be able to do that for yourself. And that's what self-leadership is. And then I'm also really passionate about conscious living. A lot of people are in what I called automated living style, where you just kind of go and you haven't thought too much about what you're doing. And so a lot of the work that we do is we step back, we look at what we're doing in our lives, what our day-to-day looks like, what we're working toward. We assess it. Is that really in alignment with who I want to be and what I want to achieve? And then we intentionally choose what we're going to keep and what we're going to leave, or what we're going to step into, what new things we're going to step into. So that's a little bit about me. So the struggle is real. I just want to make sure you know you're in the right place if any of these things apply to you. So you're in the right place if you are struggling to get your child to eat nutritious foods. I'd say this is probably 90 to 95% of the parent population, at least in Western culture. Number 2 is you have a picky eater in your home. You're in the right place if that's the case. You are also in the right place if dinner time, and I'm sorry if this is your experience, but if dinner time feels like a battleground, stick with me. I'm going to help you with that. And you're also in the right place if you're second guessing your methods in the kitchen. Oh man, I have actually, if any of these resonate with you, if you're watching this back, I want you to just jot down the number 1 somewhere. And if all 4 resonate, I want you to write 1 4 times. And if you're here live in the chat, I want you to put a number 1 in the chat if any of these resonate with you. If I was in the chat, I'd have all 4 my old self, like 5 years ago, I'd say would have all four ones in there. So before we kind of jump into the five key strategies, I want to make sure, oh yeah, I'm getting some ones here. Okay, awesome. Before we jump into the strategies, I want to just make sure you understand what lens I'm coming from. So I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes talking about intuitive eating. So there's a lot of misconceptions about intuitive eating. The main one being intuitive eating means you can eat whatever you want, whenever you want, at whatever amount you want. And that is really very untrue. That's not what it's about. So what intuitive eating is it means making peace with all foods, all types of foods. So, unlike traditional diets that restrict or ban certain foods, intuitive eating requires you to stop looking at foods as good or bad and instead learning to listen to your inner cues that your body is giving you. We are all born with these innate abilities, with these cues. So, for example, everyone knows what it feels like, or I'd say most people know what it feels like when you overeat. It feels really uncomfortable. Your belly is like distended. You might have issues with digestion and eliminations, right? Those are cues. And we can actually learn to hear those cues before we get to that uncomfortably full state. A little bit more about intuitive eating. And I want to speak to the psychology of this. And this is just one small example, or I guess it's two small examples, but there's many, many more to support this. Is one of the reasons that diets don't work, and they don't, and there's statistics that show like I think it's 95% or more of diets fail within 6 months to a year. Um, One of the reasons is it doesn't take psychology into account. And so it's really interesting when you study how the human brain works. And one thing that we talk about a lot in intuitive eating is the idea of restricting foods and how that actually does the opposite. It has the opposite effect of what you're going for. So when you restrict food, it actually draws more attention to the food that you're trying to avoid. So I'm going to give you my favorite example. This is not food related, but if I told you right now, don't think about the pink elephant. Don't think about a pink elephant. Whatever you do, don't think about a pink elephant. What are you thinking about? You're thinking about a pink elephant, right? So it's the same with food. I can say to myself, no cookies, no cookies, no cookies, but my brain doesn't hear no. It's just focusing on the cookies. Yes, okay? So we have to take the psychology, human psychology, into account, and then we want to learn to work with that. The other thing restricting foods does is it creates the forbidden fruit effect, we call it. And so I like to relate this to the bad boy that you were interested in high school, but your like mom said you couldn't date him. And he probably wasn't really that as interesting as who your mom made him when she forbid you to try to go out with him. He became more alluring because he wasn't allowed, right? It's that inner rebel. And the same thing happens with food. And then the other piece of this is that when we dive deep and we get really connected to the benefits of the foods that we're going to consume, the human brain wants to do what benefits it. We as humans, that's what we want to do. So when we can actually use this information to benefit us, the food loses power and you regain it. I hear so often it's about, oh, I don't have any willpower. I don't have any self-control. And that's really not the case. You just need a different avenue and a different approach that actually works with how you were created, the human that you are. And so that's what intuitive eating does. I'm going to leave it at that because I could go on about this forever. But if you want to hear more information about this, I do have a free resource called Discover Intuitive Eating. So you can just let me know and I can send you that resource. I can also include it in the notes that I'm going to send you following following this recording and this live. So here they are. These are the 5 steps to raising confident eaters. So stick with me because I know some of these might trigger some of you, but I'm going to break them down and I promise I'm going to make them really actionable and realistic. I'm very passionate about making health and your relationship with food actually accessible, actually doable. We all know what to do. It's not a lack of information, But if we can't actually do it and we can't access the steps, it's not helpful. Okay, so I'm going to break this down for you. But these are the five. So number one is ditch the food rules and the pressure. Stay with me. I'm going to qualify that. Number two, you're going to learn to trust your child's hunger and fullness. Number three, we're going to make all foods neutral and balanced. Number four, we're going to encourage curiosity and involvement. Those are biggies. And I'd probably say the biggest of them all is modeling a positive relationship with food. Okay, so let's break this down. So number one, ditch the food rules and the pressure. So this is probably the biggest shift to make, getting rid of pressure and rules around food. And what I want to ask you to start out, and you can actually drop a 3 in the chat or jot it down on your notes if you're watching this back. Write a 3 down if you are a part of the Clean Your Plate Club. So what that means is growing up, your parents made you clean your plate, or there was like a strong encouragement to do that. Or maybe you're part of the Clean Your Plate Club right now as the parent. So drop a 3 in the chat. There's no shame. It's just an awareness thing. I 100% was part of that club. My parents, I had to clean my plate. I would sometimes sit, it's really funny to look back at this now. I would sometimes sit at the table for like an hour. Like my mom would set a timer. And I was just honestly more interested in chatting. That's why speaking, right? I was more interested in chatting than I was eating. And I just was like a little bird eater. I just wanted to kind of snack here and there, right? And so what we were taught is that if we finished our food, it was like a gold star. If we finished our food, we were good. But what did that actually teach us? It actually taught us to ignore our inner cues. It taught us, excuse me, it taught us to override our hunger and fullness cues. And instead of listening to those internal cues, it taught us to listen to the external cues, which was our parents and our plates, right? So now we need to figure out what to do instead. We don't want to do that, but what do I do instead? So what we're not going to do is force bribe or push the just one bite. We're not going to. Now, you can encourage your children to try a bite, absolutely. But it's like these hard and fast rules that I really would encourage you to avoid. Okay? What this does is it creates stress and it makes your kids less likely to try new food. When a child feels unsafe, they do not feel adventurous, right? Think about you're trying some new adventurous, I don't know, maybe you want to learn how to snowboard. I'm just thinking about all the snow outside. If you show up and the place does not look safe, the people don't really know what they're doing, you're not wanting to be adventurous. You're not wanting to take a risk, or they're pressuring you. Yeah, yeah, just do it. You can like just do it, right? You might not want to actually take part. So it's the same with your kids and food. And one thing I also want to speak to around this is that kids don't have a lot of power, whatever age they are. Obviously, the younger they are, the less power they have, but they don't have a lot of power in their lives. They often walk around, and adults, they're literally going from one place where adults tell them what to do to another place where adults tell them what to do. And food is a place where they can exercise power. So, no, maybe they can't control what's served to them, but they can control what they eat and what they don't eat, right? And they will exercise power around food even when it has nothing to do with food at all. So part of the piece of this is how can we give our kids power where it's appropriate so that they don't want to exercise it at the table, but then also how do we not set ourselves up for this power struggle by creating pressure, right? And enforcing like kind of like ultimatums and stuff like that. So instead, what we're going to do is we're going to expose our kids to new foods by offering a variety of foods without pressure, and you're going to let your child decide what and how much to eat. So we're going to do this within reason, and I'm going to speak to this as we continue to go through. But the other really important thing is when your kids do try something new, we're going to celebrate that. Okay? Doesn't need to be anything over the top. We're just going to celebrate that. Good for you. I'm so proud of you for like trying something new. How do you feel about being open to trying something new? The second thing is stop labeling food as good or bad. I know this is hard. I know this is really hard, or healthy and unhealthy. Um, Instead, we want all foods to fit in a balanced diet. Okay. What I love, the shift I love to make with my clients is instead of good and bad food, we can say good feeling and bad feeling foods, right? And what I love about that is that's really individual to the person. So for me, I'll give you an example. Eggs are a good feeling food for me. I feel really nourished. I digest them really easily. They keep me full for a long amount of time. So those are good feeling foods for me. For somebody else, eggs they might not be able to digest them very well. And I also love that it's really close to the good and the bad. So if I slip up good feeling foods, I can like insert it in there. But it really does encourage the self-reflection piece. Bad feeling foods for me, sugar, dairy, especially if I have too much or too much bread, I can end up feeling inflamed, bloated, have issues with digestion. So that is a really, really great way to talk about food instead of it's good or it's bad, because again, we want to avoid the restriction and making that food more alluring by making it forbidden. One really great tool that I love to use with this is asking what we call high mileage questions. So asking like really reflective questions. And one of them would be, what food makes your body feel best? What would that look like if you asked your kids? And you can ask a child of any age, right? You can ask like a 2 or 3 year old, or you can ask your 19-year-old, right? And one thing I really, really want to stress here is don't worry about what your child's answer is. Okay. Sometimes people get stuck on this because sometimes your kids are going to give you a crappy answer just because you were already fighting over something and they just, again, want to exercise that power. They want to get the attention, they want to get a rise out of you. So don't worry about their answer. It's actually you asking the question that's the most important part. Okay. Because most kids aren't going to come up with that question on their own. They're not going to walk around and think, what food served me best? What food served me, don't serve me very well? You're putting that question into their awareness, okay, into their consciousness. So that's actually, they're going to start thinking about it because you've put it there, right? Over time, they will be able to answer this, and you might get that one moment where it's this little gem moment where I've had some really, really cool moments with my kids. Um, yeah, it's actually, it's so worth it. I'm telling you right now, it's so worth it investing in this because you're investing in a healthy relationship with food for your kids for life. Even if they go off track for a little bit, you're laying the foundation right now that they're going to be able to come back to. Okay. So, talking about how foods make you feel versus that's a bad food or that's a good food, you're empowering your child to make that choice and to make that distinction for their body. And that gives them ownership over it. And it's not about mom makes me do this or dad makes me do that or grandma or auntie or whatever. It's no, I chose this. I chose to eat this food or I choose to eat this food. And so therefore I deal with the consequences, good or bad. Okay, and the third thing is creating a positive mealtime atmosphere. So this can be tricky, especially if right now the dinner table is a battleground. But I'm going to give you some really, really great examples of some activities you can do to intentionally start to shift that. So we can create a positive atmosphere by simple things, just sharing fun stories, playing a light game. I love asking my kids different questions at dinner, like, what was the funniest thing that happened today? Or, tell me one really nice thing you saw somebody do or silly or whatever, right? But you can also do some really cool activities. So one of my favorites is called Silly Utensil Night. And what this looks like is you go into your like larger utensil drawer and you've got to pick some items for the kids to choose from. So that might look like a big set of tongs. That might look like a pasta strainer, like those little spoons that are like pasta. I think it's called a pasta strainer. That might look like the burger flipper. And everybody has to choose an item and you've got to eat your dinner with that. It is so much fun. It's so silly. If you really engage in this, your kids are going to really enjoy it. And again, from any age. Your teenagers, even if they try to pretend like they don't like it, listen, I'm an expert in this. I teach grade 7 and 8. They're going to actually really enjoy it and it's going to just take the pressure off. Okay, that's one example. Another fun thing that we did recently was, and I don't wouldn't do this all the time because I'm such a tree hugger, but my husband put tin foil on our dinner table and made pasta, and he like dumped all the ingredients all over the middle of the table. No plates. Everybody just dished into their spot. The kids were eating with just their mouths, sucking up the pasta. It was very dirty, but it was so, so fun. We had such a great time. And my son actually had his friend over that day, and it was a core memory for sure. And so, those are just some examples of how to shift the energy around the dinner table if it's feeling kind of negative and it's feeling like there's fights, because you might not even be doing anything. You might sit down, and just because the environment is like we're just used to being like, like I used to have my kids would sit down and they'd be like, "Oh, I don't want this," and I'm like, you actually don't know what we're having. Like, I haven't even told you what we're, yeah, but I know it's going to be gross, right? So they just get in the habit. Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm glad I'm getting some comments. I love that. Um, so, so this is just a great way to start to flip the switch. Please, please, please don't get stuck in the instant gratification trap. I want you to try these things, even if you just pick one and really lean into it. Try it for 2, 3, 4 weeks and be patient. I'm telling you, it is so worth it. You're not going to see an instant switch. It's just not going to happen. Think about how long this has been happening, the negative mealtime energy. You need to give yourself some time to turn that around. Okay. And so, why this is all important is that when kids feel safe and they feel like they have some control, they eat better, right? Another part about the kind of positive mealtime atmosphere, and we'll talk about this later, but when you involve your kids in making the meal and cooking, it is amazing. Like we can literally make the exact same thing. This was, I'm thinking back to like 3, 4 years ago. You make like, say we made stir fry. Okay, I could make the stir fry, serve it, and my kids were like, and I could get my kids to help me make the stir fry and they would eat it no problem. Like it's actually funny now at this point. And really, when you think about it, it's because my kids have seen exactly what's going in. They've seen the onions, they've seen the peppers and the broccoli and whatever's in the sauce and the rice and all that sort of stuff. They know every single ingredient that's in there and they know that it's safe. Oh yeah, I do like this. I do like that. And it just tastes good together. So they're just more open to eating it because they know exactly what is in that. So it gives them that feeling of safety and control. And then those questions that we were talking about, like what foods make you feel really good? Those are really reflective. You're encouraging this reflection within your child, which is really empowering. When you ask your child's opinion on something and then you trust it, what you're saying to your child is, I trust you. And you're teaching them to trust themselves, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about this after, but just also include encouraging the experimentation of like doing something and kind of getting feedback from that, like, oh, that was too much or that was too little. That's all a really, really important part of this process. And it's not about like failure, it's feedback. Oh, that works and that doesn't. That's really good to know. Okay. So the second one is to trust your child's hunger and fullness. Okay. This one can feel tough because trust is tough, right? And we're trusting our kids to know their own body. And this is where allowing and your kids to experiment and really just kind of being open to that flow of making a decision, assessing, and then adjusting and supporting them along that, but allowing them to lead. So we want to let kids decide how much to eat. And their appetite is going to vary daily, and that's okay. Actually, it's very normal. We as adults, because we've lost these cues, we kind of just get in the habit of eating a certain way all the time in the same way. And that's really not how it works, especially for women. What's going on with our hormones, it's very, very normal and healthy to have in certain phases of your cycle to be more hungry. They've actually been able to assess it down to like even an amount of calories or a percentage of calories that you're going to take in at certain stages versus others based on your hormone levels, the concentration of your hormones. So this is very normal. So please don't be surprised by that. You want to take a bird's eye view step back and look at what your kids are eating over the week. Also, if they're sick, you're going to notice they're not going to eat as much. And then what I notice with my kids is that they catch up. They come back with a vengeance, catching up with what they missed. Um, I love to allow kids to dish their own food. So I love family style dinners where you put everything on the table and again, it's okay. We can allow them to fail a little bit. My daughter's eyes are bigger than her stomach for sure. And so she'll dish and I'll say, "Oh, okay, honey, that might be a little too much. Did you want to try to take a little bit away?" And then we can always add. And she's usually really open to that. And she's learned now kind of a better idea of what might be the right amount for her. And then I always let my kids know, like, there's always more. Even if it's not here, we can make more. So they feel really safe in that way. One thing I want to really encourage you to talk to your kids about, and this might be news, probably is news to most of you, is the difference between physical and emotional hunger. I'm going to tell you about a free gift that I have at the end that you're going to get access to, and I'll put this information on that so you can see it. But just really briefly, physical hunger comes on slowly and it can be satisfied by multiple foods. So if someone is genuinely physically hungry, they're okay with having like a wide array of foods to satisfy that. Emotional hunger, however, comes on quickly and can only be satisfied by specific foods. I need chips. I need chocolate. They walk by the vending machine and it's just like emotional hunger because they're excited and they want that dopamine that's going to come from the sugar or whatever it is, right? Or the satisfaction or the feeling that it's fun. Those foods are fun. That's often what happens with kids and happens with us too, even though we might not want to admit it. So those are really great cues. Physical hunger comes on slowly and can be satisfied with multiple foods. Emotional hunger, sorry, yeah, did I say comes on slowly? Yeah. Emotional hunger comes on quickly and can only be satisfied by specific foods. Another thing for this trusting the hunger and fullness cues is offering regular meals and snacks. So structure is really important, but we want to get our kids to listen to their hunger cues. Now, I am not telling you to be in the kitchen every 15 minutes or every half an hour. What I'm invested in is especially coaching moms and helping them care for themselves. So that is not what I want for you. But we can use really helpful strategies to help give your kids access to foods when they need it, and where they can actually kind of be more independent in that. So one of my favorite things to do for this is my kids kind of have bento boxes, I guess they're called. It's the Planet box. I got them at Costco. They're like the metal containers that have all the different compartments. And so in the summer, when they're not like necessarily going anywhere to a camp or anything, I will pack those for them. I will take the morning, I'll take half an hour to get all the food ready for the day, and I leave it in the fridge. They can take it out and put it back in when they want. If we need to run out the door, we can take that with us. Super, super helpful. I don't do that every single day. I don't do that necessarily on the weekends, but what I will do on the weekends is I'll cut up a bunch of fruit and vegetables, put them on a plate, and I'll leave them out. My daughter, she will eat a little bit of her dinner. She doesn't do this all the time, but she regularly will eat dinner and then she's like, "Oh, I'm full." And then so we put it on the counter and she can go back to it when she's ready and she goes back to it, I'd say 9 out of 10 times and finishes it. So it's there for her to access. And then the third thing is to avoid comments like, "Well, you can't be hungry, you just ate," right? What I love to do instead here is to educate my kids in a really gentle way. We call it gentle nutrition. And so just from like a very just kind of teacher standpoint of, okay, when we eat, I have a visual that I share with my kids of what your plate, kind of the ideal plate looks like. And it doesn't have to be in every meal, but just over the day of how we need some carbs, we need some protein, we need some healthy fats. And that's what makes us feel energized. That's what makes us feel full for a long time. So we don't feel like we have to go back and eat something every 15 minutes. So those are really, really helpful conversations. It's pretty cool. My kids are 7 and 9, and they can actually speak to this pretty eloquently. which is really exciting. And so this is really important because kids learn to trust their internal cues more than their external cues. So I love to say to my kids, okay, let's check in and see what your body needs. Or, yeah, what do you think your body's asking for right now? What did you have already? It's really interesting because I hate cereal. Like, I don't want my kids to have cereal just because, like, when you think about the nutritional breakdown of it, I just know it's not great, especially the packaged stuff and all that. But I really want it to be neutral for my kids. I know how it serves my body. It does not serve my body well, but I want them to be able to make that decision. And without me like forcing that on them, they basically never have cereal anymore because they've learned that it makes them hungry like half an hour or an hour later. And then by the time they're at school, they're so hungry and they're so uncomfortable because they didn't have as much of like the balanced meal that they needed. And if they do have that, I've learned to, we've learned, oh, maybe we'll have some egg with that, or we'll have like a little bit of a shake or something like that. It's really, really powerful and rewarding when your kids start to speak this back to you. All right, we're getting there. We're almost there. So number three is we're going to make all foods neutral and we're going to keep options balanced. Okay. So this is called food neutrality. And we talked about restriction. The moment we restrict food, kids want them even more. So we don't want to restrict treats or sweets. We call them fun or play foods. I prefer play foods, or often I just actually try to not label them at all. And what happens is when we restrict them, it leads to cravings and it leads to binge behavior. Anyone feel that within themselves? Like all this stuff is going to mirror what we go through ourselves. Actually, if that resonates with you, can you jot a five down or drop a five in the chat if you feel comfortable doing that? Okay. So instead, we're going to ask questions like, how does that food make your body feel? Oh, yeah, I'm seeing some fives in the chat there. I'm sure I'm seeing people write that down. I can say for sure that was what it was for me. Restrict, 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 binge. Restrict, 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 craving. That's all I could think about, right? I have some funny stories about that, but we don't have time to go through those. So yeah, asking questions like, how does that food make your body feel? Okay. And what I love to do here is give an example of what it feels like for me. So I shared earlier how sugar makes my body feel or how dairy makes my body feel. And it's just really, really in a neutral way. This is how it feels for me. How does it feel for you? Right? Not like pushing that on them and trying to um, kind of mirror their experience because we truly don't know. I know a lot of people that don't, dairy doesn't serve them well. And I kind of used to be of the belief that dairy doesn't serve anyone well. And I met this guy that I used to work out with at a CrossFit gym and he just swore by dairy and he was a pretty healthy guy. I mean, I didn't go too much into great detail, but he swore by dairy, made him feel amazing. He said, and so I don't know his body better than him, and I'm not going to try to pretend like I do. And I think that's my biggest beef with diets is like it's telling and nutrition programs and whatever they want to rename themselves. Um, but basically, a diet is restricting or having specific rules around food, especially with the goal in mind to change your body. But the idea is that they're trying to tell you they know your body better than you. Nutrition is fine, and we use gentle nutrition. So, having a good education around nutrition, but being able to approach it in a gentle and balanced way is really what we find allows you to have a peaceful relationship with food. And you know what peaceful means? Peaceful means sustainable. Peaceful means long lasting. Peaceful means that you are not distracted by how you're going to change your body and what you're going to eat and counting calories and counting macros. Like, how much energy does that take? I can tell you, I used to do it. It was a lot of energy. It was exhausting. Now imagine freeing up all that brain space. Now imagine freeing up all that energy. Where would you put that toward? Right? It's pretty powerful when you think about it in that way. As we start to talk about, so we're going to talk about safe foods. So we always want to include when we're preparing meals, we want to include a safe food at each meal. Um, this ensures that your child will always have something familiar. And so what I like to do in this case is if we're doing, say we're doing like a steak, potatoes, and grilled vegetables. I know my kids don't like grilled vegetables. They do like steak. It depends on the day for potatoes. They're coming around. We've given lots of exposure, so they're coming around depending on the type of potato. But I know they don't like grilled vegetables. I'm still putting it out and I'm going to expose them to it and I'm going to offer it. But I also will put out a salad or I'll put out just like cut up raw veggies because my kids love those. And they have all of what they need. They have access to it. And they feel like, they have the food that they can enjoy, always having an option that your child will and can eat. Okay, and the final element is teaching your child that food is fuel. It's fun. It's also cultural. It's not something that you need to fear. Um, Listen, there's no doubt that there's a difference in nutritional value for different foods, and I'm not trying to argue that. The idea, though, is to keep, from an emotional standpoint, is to keep foods emotionally neutral. The reason we do this is because if you can take emotion out of it, and for you, and actually it'll be for a lot of your children too, if we can kind of separate the historical eating aspects, because we all have history in our relationships with food, if we can take those and separate them, then we can see food for what it truly is. Oh, that food doesn't make me feel good. It's a cause and effect. It's like a logical decision. But it's when we mix all the emotions in there and we mix the history in there that it becomes really confusing. So we want to try to remove those things so it's just really clear to see that food makes me feel good, that food makes me feel bad. And see that really clearly. And then the choice becomes really, really easy. So we don't want to use guilt or shame or just plain control, right? To force your kids to eat certain foods. Instead, the idea is to empower them to choose what will make their bodies feel good in a lasting way. Okay. So number 4, we're going to encourage food curiosity and involvement. So, who wants their kids to be open to new foods? Drop a 7 in the chat or write it down if you want your kids to be open to new foods. I'm going to go out on a limb and assume that that's everybody, right? Um, so here's some great ways to do that. Let your kids come grocery shopping with you. Let them pick recipes. Let them involve them in cooking. Listen, I know it's more work. I know you're tired. I know, but it is so, so, so worth the investment. My kids are already making their own eggs at 5 and 7 and their toast. Like they can make their full breakfast on their own. And it was an investment in time, but it is well worth it. And not only does it save me time, but my daughter, for example, she loves her eggs like just straight up overcooked. Like I would not eat the eggs she cooked, but that's how she likes them. I've never seen her not eat the eggs she cooked herself because she cooks it the way that she wants it, right? So she's also more invested in it because she cooked them. We pick recipes as a family, and even if my kids don't contribute, they've had the opportunity to, so they can't really complain because I gave you the opportunity. Okay, so just allows your kids to take ownership over their food experience. Use fun, hands-on meals. So not only can we make the dinner time fun, but we can also make foods fun. I love alternating these. What we used to do is be like adult meal, kids meal. That's what we used to call them. And it's really cute now because like my daughter used to not like curry and we love curry. And she would be like, this is an adult meal. And now we've had conversations with her like, Jordan, you like curry. You complained about it and then you eat the whole thing every time you had it. And she's like, oh yeah. So now she's like, curry is a kid's meal and stir fry is a kid's meal. So because they've been exposed to it so much, they are feeling like it's safe to try and then they're learning that they actually like it. But then there's also fun things you can do like build your own tacos, sandwich bars, smoothie stations. Get your kids in there, get their hands dirty. Even your teenagers are going to love doing that when you get to participate and do something that's a little bit different and be hands-on. It's usually a positive experience. And the third thing, which I spoke to a little bit earlier, is keep offering foods without pressure. Exposure, exposure, exposure. Exposure is enough. If any of you guys have done any sort of training in business or marketing or anything like that, what do we talk about? We talk about exposures. And often there's different statistics that get sent around, but in general, the idea is a person needs 10 to 15 exposures before they commit to purchasing. I want you to think about your kids in that way. And I want you to go for exposures instead of going for like, oh, they didn't, I put this out and they didn't eat it. I want you to go for the exposure. I want you to go for 15 exposures for whatever the new food is. And I promise you, you're going to start to see a difference. Okay. I love using my kombucha example. So I love kombucha. I was like weirded out by it at first, and then I kind of tried it and this and that. And then my kids started to see me, and I put it out on the table and asked them if they wanted some. And now they love kombucha because they've been exposed to it so much. And it's really fun because I do this now when I go out with my friends. I feel like I should like become affiliated with a kombucha company because I have made so many people try, like not made them, but I've like opened them up to kombucha just from bringing it with me. I bring extra, say, hey guys, anyone want to try some kombucha? This is kind of what it does. And I'll bring extras. I'll put it in the fridge. Like, you guys, please help yourself. I'll leave some for the host. So exposure, I promise you, is enough. So go for the exposure number. And this is really important because when all of these things are important because when kids interact with food, they feel more comfortable, right? Think of it like a person. Your child, you might not be comfortable with a person, your child might not be comfortable with a person, but the more you're around that person, the more you become comfortable. And it's the same with food. Okay, we're almost there. Number 5. Okay, this is the biggie. What is the most powerful thing you can do? Model. Model, model, model. Model what it means to have a healthy relationship with food, what it means to have a positive and peaceful relationship with food. I really can't speak to this enough. What does that look like? Eating a variety of foods yourself and enjoying them without guilt. I want your kids to see you eating vegetables and really healthy proteins and healthy fats, but I also want them to see you eat ice cream and chocolate. And I want them to see you do that in a really balanced, peaceful way. Okay, that is so important for your kids to see. Avoid negative self-talk about your body or your diet. I cringe when I hear parents talking about diets, and it's not to shame you. It's not at all. It's so, so common. But it's just because of my background and that I'm so passionate about this. Or like even things like, we're taking a picture, suck in, like I don't want that for you. I want you to be at peace with your body and with food, but I also don't want your child, especially your girls, being exposed to that. And so all that I'm saying here is it's just all the more worthwhile to lean into healing this part of you and just to really be open to this intuitive eating journey. It is so, so worth it. It truly has a generational impact. So you're healing for the generations before you and for the generations coming after you. That is so, so powerful. And then, as I was speaking to before, is just gently educating your children on nutrition. I love to just share fun facts like, oh my gosh, did you know that red peppers have the most vitamin C than any other food? It's like the most concentrated in vitamin C. Like vitamin C is great to fight off any sort of colds or any sort of bugs. And vitamin C is great to build up immunity. Like having conversations like that. My kids love to tell me carrots are good for your eyes, right? We talk about all those sort of things. And again, you can do that at an age appropriate level. Your actions speak louder than words. So I have a lot of people, I don't know what to say. I want to say the right thing. You don't need to worry about the right thing to say if you're walking the talk, if you're modeling it, and you don't need to be perfect. How powerful would it be to go through this intuitive eating transformation with your children, like alongside, learn together. Oh man, I ate too much yesterday. You know how I could tell? My belly felt so full. I felt like my food was like stuck in my throat, right? Go through it with them. Did that happen to you? Like, do it together. What a beautiful journey that you could take alongside one another. Yeah, this is like my number one thing that I tell parents. Oh, I want to help my kids have a healthy relationship with food. And I will tell you, this is even for adult children. right? I know some people in my life that are like, I want my daughter to be healthy and like she's not eating healthy and she's not working out. And it's like, okay, are you doing it, right? You model it. Show her how amazing it is to feel good and to move and to, eat nutritious foods. So this is just summarizing those 5 things we just talked about. I know breaking old habits around food and meal times can be challenging, but raising intuitive eaters is really about trust and not control. And it is so, 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 so worth it. Okay. So here's my final thought. If you implement even one of these strategies, you will start to see shifts. Please give it time. Please be patient and please be committed to it. Pick one and just be consistent. Okay. You're going to see that your child's going to begin to trust their body. They're going to start to feel safe with food and then eventually grow into a confident eater. And as I just said, consistency is key. You're most likely not going to see massive shifts after the first or second time that you start to implement these new strategies. If you do those really fun meal times, I think you'll see some change in that. But just when I'm talking about the lasting, kind of long lasting changes, um, but it is so worth it. And really, the more you can step into neutrality, the better. So the more relaxed you are around food, the more relaxed your kids will be. And this is how we're going to be able to help kids enjoy food without guilt or stress. Food does not go well with guilt and stress and shame. Okay, so I'm going to tell you about my free gift. So I am going to ask you to take an action step for this free gift. So if you send me an email or a direct message with your biggest takeaway, then you're going to get the Raising Confident Eaters cheat sheet. I love cheat sheets. On one sheet, all these things, really succinct, couple of tips, a couple of kind of scripts or specific examples. Really, really, really powerful. It's going to help just kind of summarize everything that we talked about today, but in a really accessible way that you can use on a day-to-day basis. And I'm also going to send you my mindful eating resource. Really amazing activity to do for yourself, but you can also do it with your kids. It's actually one of my favorite things to do in the workshops that I run. And then I'm going to share some next steps with you. So you came, you saw, and now you're ready to conquer. But what should you do next? So here are some options. And I'm also going to share a special offer with you in a minute. So you can book a discovery call. So this is a free call. If you want to learn a little bit more about my coaching, if you want to learn and get some access to some more resources to learn more about intuitive eating, conscious living. I also talk a lot about cycle syncing with my clients, which is helping women learn to live in alignment with their cycle, or self-leadership, positive habit formation. If you just want more info in general, you can book one of these calls. You can use this QR code to access all of these links. If you want to sign up for my e-newsletter, I really love these. I share a healthy recipe every week and they are 30 minutes or less. I'm like a 30-minute in the kitchen kind of girl. I don't spend a lot of time, but listen, you can have really great meals in 30 minutes or less. I also have a couple tricks up my sleeve that help you prep multiple meals or parts of multiple meals so you're not in the kitchen for hours and hours every single week. I share a wellness tip in there as well, and you'll be the first to know about upcoming events, either online or in person. And then I would love for you to connect with me on social media. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm trying to get myself on LinkedIn a little more, so keep an eye out for that as well. And then I wanted to share a special offer with you. So this is actually the first time that I'm running this. This is a new program. And so you guys are getting the first offer of this. So this is called the Mealtime Reset. And what that looks like is it's 4 private coaching sessions. Each are 60 minutes long. And you're going to get personalized strategies to help you and your family expand food choices specifically aimed towards your children. You're going to get age-appropriate scripts and conversations, and this is all going to be customized for you. So we're going to pick goals together, and we're going to pick action steps together that are actually doable within your current life circumstances, right? So if I'm also adding a bonus here, so if you sign up within the next 48 hours from right now, you're going to get a meal and snack guide for stress-free family eating. How amazing. I have these resources that I've made up on my whiteboard in my kitchen. People come over and they take pictures of these. It's like, oh my gosh, look at those. I have them for lunches, I have them for dinners, and it just makes it so much easier rather than trying to rack your brain for like meal ideas and stuff like that. Okay, the investment for this is only $297. That's like total. I actually can't believe I'm this is less than what I charge like for 2 sessions. So you're getting 4 sessions for less than the price of two. But I am offering limited spots. So actually only have 3 spots right now. So if you are interested in this, I really recommend jumping on it. You can just either let me know and or you can book that call and write it in the notes and I'll know that you're interested. And then I can just like bookmark that spot for you. And then we'll go through finalizing all of that. Okay, so I'm going to put this slide up again so that if you want to get access to those links, you can. And I'm going to leave the next 15 minutes for questions. If you're watching this back and you have questions, please feel free to connect with me through these avenues and I will be happy to answer. Thank you all so, so much for joining me. If you're here live with me, please stick around and I will be here to answer your questions. Bye.